It began like so many ordinary days. No warning signs, no dramatic music playing in the background, just two people heading out to handle what should have been a simple job. Kayla Brown and her boyfriend, Charles Carver, known to friends as Charlie, were young, full of life, and doing what most people do every day, going somewhere, expecting to come back. Nothing about that morning suggested it would be the last normal moment they would experience together. But sometimes, the most dangerous situations don't look dangerous at all. They look routine. At first, their disappearance didn't trigger immediate panic. A missed call here, an unanswered text there. It happens. Phones die, plans change, people get busy. But then a day passed, then another, and then the silence stopped feeling normal. Friends started asking questions. Family members began calling more frequently. That shift from "they're probably fine" to "something's wrong" is subtle, but once it happens, it doesn't go away. In Spartanburg County, South Carolina, authorities were alerted. A missing persons case began, and like many cases, it started with very little. No clear timeline, no confirmed last sighting, just absence. But then came the first real clue: Kayla's cell phone. Signals traced back to a rural property, quiet, spacious, the kind of place where nothing seems out of the ordinary because there's nothing around to compare it to. That property belonged to Todd Kohlhepp. On paper, he didn't raise alarms. 45 years old, a licensed real estate agent, a private pilot, successful, stable, the kind of person you'd expect to be selling homes, not hiding secrets. If anything, he probably looked like the most put-together person in the room, which, as history has shown more than once, is not always a comforting detail. When officers arrived at the property, nothing immediately stood out. Open land, quiet surroundings, no obvious signs of distress. But investigations don't rely on first impressions. They rely on persistence, and sometimes on listening carefully. Because then it happened. A sound. Faint at first, easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. Banging, thudding, and then a voice, screaming. Not loud enough to echo across the property, but desperate enough to cut through everything else. That sound led officers to something that, until that moment, had just been part of the landscape. A large metal shipping container, closed, locked. Ordinary if you didn't know better. And that's the thing about ordinary objects. They don't come with warnings, no label that says, "do not open." No sign that something is terribly wrong, until you hear someone inside. Officers forced the container open, and inside, they found Kayla Brown, alive, but barely holding on. Her condition told a story before she even spoke. A chain secured around her ankle, another around her neck. She had been held there, in that container, for over 2 months. Let that sink in. 2 months in a metal box, no sunlight, limited food, no certainty of survival. And yet, she was still there, still fighting, still alive. Kayla was shaken, exhausted, and terrified, but she was also coherent enough to tell officers what had happened, and what she said changed everything. She told them about Charlie, about how Todd Kohlhepp had shot him 3 times in front of her. No warning, no hesitation, just sudden, irreversible violence. She described how his body had been wrapped, covered, buried somewhere on that same property. Imagine carrying that knowledge, not for minutes, not for hours, but for weeks, trapped, alone, with no way to escape and no way to know if you'd be next. Kayla explained how her captor controlled everything: food, water, time. Some days he came, some days he didn't, which, strangely, might have been worse, because unpredictability creates its own kind of fear. You don't know when something will happen, only that it might. And that's enough to keep your mind in a constant state of alert. He told her no one would find her, that she didn't matter, that this was how her story would end. And yet, despite all of that, she kept fighting, kept banging on the walls, kept making noise. Because as long as she could make sound, she still had a chance. And that sound, that was the difference. Because if she had stayed silent, this story might have ended very differently. After her rescue, the investigation expanded immediately. Officers searched the property thoroughly, and they found Charlie, exactly where Kayla said he would be. But it didn't stop there. As search teams continued, more remains were discovered. Other victims, people who had disappeared, people whose stories hadn't been solved, until now. What initially seemed like a single case turned into something much larger, a pattern, a history, a reality that had been hidden in plain sight. Todd Kohlhepp eventually confessed. Multiple murders, planned, executed, concealed. He wasn't impulsive, he was methodical, prepared. The kind of person who understood exactly what he was doing and took steps to avoid being caught. For years. Which raises an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes, danger doesn't look dangerous. Sometimes, it looks successful, polite, ordinary. He was sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms without parole. A legal ending, but not the kind that erases what happened. Because cases like this don't really end. They just stop moving. Kayla's survival remains one of the most extraordinary parts of this case. Because surviving something like that isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional, psychological. Every day in that container required a decision to keep going, to not give up, even when there was no clear reason to believe rescue was coming. She later described the fear, the isolation, the moments where hope felt distant, but also the determination, the refusal to let that be the end. And it's worth noting, survival doesn't always look dramatic. It's not always big, heroic actions. Sometimes it's just one more hour, one more attempt, one more time hitting the wall. And in her case, that was enough. The case shocked the Spartanburg community because it forced people to rethink something they rarely question. The idea that you can recognize danger when you see it, because clearly, that's not always true. Todd Kohlhepp had blended in, built a life, maintained appearances, and all the while, something far darker existed beneath the surface. The media coverage was intense. The story spread quickly, because it had everything that unsettles people: an ordinary setting, a hidden crime, a survivor, and the realization that something like this could exist without being noticed. It also raised questions about missing persons investigations, about how long someone can go unnoticed, about what signs get missed and why. Kayla Brown's story is often described as horrifying, and it is, but it's also something else. It's proof that even in extreme situations, people can endure more than we expect. That resilience isn't theoretical, it's real. And sometimes, it's the only thing standing between life and death. Because in the end, this entire case came down to one thing: a sound, a decision to keep making noise, to not give in to silence. That banging on the container walls wasn't just desperation, it was strategy, it was survival, and it worked. One voice, trapped inside steel, managed to break through, and that was enough to change everything.
That's another case closed here in the Rotten Swamp. The truth always surfaces, no matter how deep it's buried. If you're hungry for more dark mysteries, hit subscribe and ring that bell. Until next time, keep your doors locked and your secrets buried deeper than mine. This is Rotten Swamp, where justice never rots.